Hello everyone, and welcome to another Bytes University video. Today we're going to be doing part 2 of the button press example, and we're still going to be doing a state machine, but this time we're going to change the problem a little bit. Say we have a button, and when you press it, it's on, and when you release it, it stays on, right? So it's an on and off button. If you press it, if you're pressing it, it stays on. And then when you press it again, it turns off, just like a normal button in real life. On, off. So how do we do this in a state machine? Well, if you remember the last part 1 that we just did, the last problem we just did, it was a press and hold button to turn on our LED, which is B1. Now we want to have the LED stay on if we release the button. Well, that's going to be a little more tricky. If we press it, we want it to stay on. What happens when we press it and we want it to stay off? Stay off. Well, notice from our very realistic drawing here, we've got 4 states now. So if it's not being pressed, and then you press it to stay on, and then if it's not being pressed, and you press it to stay off. That means that we're going to have 4 states. I'm going to draw them in a nice box here. When you walk up to this button, we're going to assume that it's off. That means that it's off and no one's touching it. So it's released. It's pressed or released. So we're going to call this off release. Then once you click the button, it becomes on. That's on, and you're pressing it, right? On press. And then when you release it, you want the light to stay on. So that means that the light is still on, but it's released. And then when you click it again, you press it, it becomes off press. And that goes into off release. So we know that when it's off and you click it, it turns on. And once you release it, it stays on. And then when you click it again, it turns off and it stays off. And that's our state machine right here. Let's fill it out a little bit more. When it's off, we know that A0 is 0. It's not on. So we're going to do a quick self loop here. And we're going to say not A0. A0 is false. A0 is 0. And it stays on off release. Now, when you click it, A0 becomes true. And it goes on press. Now, what happens if you press and hold the button? Well, it's just going to stay on press. You just press and hold. You're just going to hang out on press. And then once you release it, you want it to stay on release. But your A0 is still going to change. So you're pressing and holding it. You want it to turn on when you release the button. So you release it. You go to your next state. And now the light should be on. And you're not touching the button. So it's on release. And you want it to stay on if you're not touching it. So it's going to stay here when it's A0 is false. And then you click it again, which means that A0 becomes true. And it's off press. What happens if you press and hold it? We're just going to let it be, hang out on off press. And then once you release the button, A0 becomes false, and you end up on off release. This is our state machine for button press, where when you press it and release it, it turns on. When you press it and release it, it turns off. Notice that there's one flow of direction. You cannot go from on press back to off release. There's no mix up. The machine knows it goes A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D. If you want to have your initialization or your start, this is typically written as init. Just know that your start state, we'll make this a state, sure. Just know that your start state is always going to start on off release if you want to turn on the machine and just have the LED be off. And then once you click it, it turns on. That's our state machine. Now let's implement the outputs of B1. When it's on off release, we want B1 to be off. We don't want the LED to be on. We want it to be off. And once you click it, and if you press and hold it, this is up to you. If you press and hold the button to turn it on, you can either turn on the button as you're pressing it, or once you release it, then the light turns on. We're going to say that as you release it, it turns on. And then again, once it's off press, you're pressing it, you want it to turn off when you release it. That's what this means. You can notice that it comes out to be almost symmetric. You've got your off release and off press, your on press and on release. You've got your self loops on all of them. You've got your outputs on the diagonals. This is a very simple button press. It's got 5 states if you include the start. And that's the state machine for a button press. Thanks for watching.